class, Professor Peaky here, and today I'm bringing you guys my Neo-Spacian deck profile. For those who are familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, this is just, they recently got some new support from Ghosts from the Past too, so let's get right into it. I first run 3 copies of Neo-Space Connector. Neo-Space Connector is the best starter in the deck, gets you to all your different Neo-Spacians, it gets you to Neo, so any piece that you may need to go ahead and start comboing off, he's your man, he's the one to get there. On top of that, he's an easy link too into Anaconda, which we do run in this deck. So he's very versatile. He's something you want to kind of bait out everything first and then play him, because again, we want everything to go through. Next, I run 2 copies of Keeper of Dragon Magic. Keeper of Dragon Magic is really, really good. With the cost of 1 discard, you can go ahead and search any fusion or polymerization card. So again, the primary targets here are going to be the NEOS Fusion, which is literally the bread and butter of the deck. Again, I did run them at 3, but I think 2 is a good number to kind of be between the 5 to 6 card ratio for starters. I do also run a bunch of going second cards, as well as some hand traps to kind of compete with the meta, because again, outside of just a pure build of this deck, it's not that competitive, but I wanted to try to make it as competitive as possible. So again, Keeper Dragon Magic is a really, really good secondary starter for the deck. So, going into our other pieces, we obviously run 2 copies of Elemental Hero Neos. 2 copies is just the right amount. He's very recyclable with our other cards, such as Miracle Contact. They'll shuffle him back into the deck, and of course, Contact Fusing shuffles him back into the deck too. So you definitely want to see him to go into any of your big fusions. Going to the Spacian lineup, I have them ordered in order of importance. So first one is going to be Grand Mole, then Aqua Dolphin, and then Air Hummingbird. So Grand Mole's our bouncing boy. He go ahead and just bounce monsters during the damage step. So that's really, really good, just to kind of clear monsters out of there. And plus, if you have no other cards or he's the only one you got, that's the best thing you can do. Aqua Dolphin, he's really good for getting that hand knowledge and advantage and possibility of ripping out, a starter from your opponent's hand. So he's really, really good to get off of Neo-Space Connector. And then finally, moving into Air Hummingbird, sometimes I go into him just to get that life point cushion before I go into Anaconda. So again, if I've already have like Dolphin in the field or in the grave and I can't use him anymore, then I go into Hummingbird to give me that advantage. Going into our other Spacians, we run 1 copy of Black Panther, or excuse me, Dark Panther, and then Glowmoss, and then Flare Scarab. So Dark Panther is actually really, really good. He's good for the copying ability that he has. Sometimes it's very situational, but it does come up, especially like, for example, Dino matchups. You can copy the effect of UTC. Glowmoss, I actually don't think he's the worst. And being in a Spacian deck, I wanted to include all of them, but he's really good just to kind of stall. And then Flare Scarab, I don't think he's the best one at all. I think he's one of the worst ones, so he's kind of just there for the sake of fusion material. But hey, wanted to make sure they were all part of the lineup. So going to other monsters that are Garnets, we have Rainbow Dragon. We run now 1 copy of Ubel and then 1 copy of Neos Wiseman. So of course, Rainbow Dragon we have in place for our Rainbow Neos. Again, you never want to draw it, you just want to dump it purely off Neos Fusion. Same applies for Ubel. Now with the introduction of Elemental Hero Neos Kluger, Ubel and Neos can go into that new fusion monster. And then we have the Neos Wiseman that Elemental Hero Neos Kluger floats into for any reason. So not only if it's destroyed or if it's removed from the field, he floats into it. And then going into some hand traps that I also run, I run 2 copies of Effect Veiler. I like to see them, but not all the time. That's why I have it as 2. But of course, player preference. If you want to have 2, you can have 2. Or excuse me, you can have more than 2, maybe 3 or so. And then I finally also run 2 copies of Ash Blossom as just like a safety net that kind of hits everything. On the side deck, like I do run other hand traps such as Ghost Bell or of course Ghost Ogre. So all player preference and what the matchup is. So I think those kind of touch everything, so that's why I run those. So that's it for monsters. Going into the spells and traps. Starting with the spells, again, our bread and butter, we run 3 copies of Neos Fusion. This literally gets everything going. It's one of the cards you want to use last because it prevents you from special summoning for the rest of the turn. But again, this gets you out any of your double or 2 fusion material Neoses. Also, for our going second cards, I run 2 copies of Super Poly. I used to run 3, but I think 2 is a good amount. In the OCG, it's limited to 2. I think 3 is kind of too much because I do like to see it, but not all the time. And again, with the use of Anaconda, you can actually dump Super Poly to use that effect if you really, really need it. But it's good for the new, not support, but matchups against Albaz. Then I run 2 Miracle Contact. Again, this helps me fuse and go in and recycle my material. I also run 2 copies of Convert Contact. So Convert Contact's really good to kind of refresh my hand. Since we are running all the Spacians, I think the ratios are there enough to go ahead. If I hit one with Convert Contact, I can reset my hand and Foolish Burial what I need. And then on next, I run 2 Space Gifts. So 2 Space Gift, again, if all of I have is Neo-Spacians and I have a copy of Next, which we do run, I can get up to a possible, draw 5, which is really good. But of course, you can replace this if you guys have it into like triple tactic talents and stuff like that. But again, keeping it within the theme of Neos and Neo-Spacians, I thought Space Gift was a good alternative. So again, 2 Space Gifts to kind of give us our draw, and I also run other going second cards such as Regeki, and then Harpy's Feather Duster, of course, for the back row. And then I do run 1 copy of Miracle Fusion, so you can also search Miracle Fusion off of Anaconda and dump it there, or you can also get it off Keeper of Dragon Magic. And then finally, for our traps, I run 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Again, most of the restrictions with our other cards, such as Convert Contact or Next, require us to have no monsters or no cards on the field. So Impermanence kind of fits suit with those other restrictions. So I thought it was another good hand trap to kind of have. And then finally, I actually run 3 copies of Next. I know some people go ahead and limit their copies of Next, but this card has saved me so many times in just testing online or in person and stuff like that. In worst case scenario, it can always be discard fodder for, Super Poly, or it can just be a bluff back row. But those are all the spells and traps, so I'm going to put these to the side and we'll get into the extra deck. So extra deck, it's a very tight lineup. I run 1 copy of Mud Dragon of the Swamp. Again, he's just a generic super poly target. Doesn't hit everything, but again, I'd rather have him than not. Excuse me. And then next, I run 1 Predaplant Dragostapelia. Hopefully, I pronounced that right. I used to run Starving Venom in this spot, but again, now with the new support for Albaz and with Albaz Strike in the structure deck and the Despia, there's a bunch of fusion monsters going around. And should all invoke to still a thing. So I like to have that as an option. Then of course I run 2 Brave Neos. He's our consistency piece. He's one of our main beaters. He searches any of the other Neos related spells or traps that we need from our deck to our hand to help thin the deck and build ourselves advantage. And then finally the introduction of Elemental Hero Neos Kluger and our 1 Rainbow Neos. Again, these are for our Garnet spots, but they're really good to push for game and to kind of have that resilience towards late game, especially Kluger now being able to float into Neos Wiseman. And then Rainbow Neos just really stumps a bunch of stuff. I really love going against a Sky Striker matchup and shuffling their graveyard back. Sky Striker players literally cry when that happens, and it's the greatest feeling ever. So matchups aren't like, oh, we're always going to win, but it's, again, a really, really strong and powerful card. And, of course, whenever we usually get these cards off of Neos Fusion, we have the protection there. Going into the other spots, it's just more of our 2 contact fuse targets. So we have 1 Dark Panther, which can not Dark Panther, excuse me, Dark Neos, which can negate an effect. We have Flare Neos, which gets bigger off the spells and traps, so that's really good against spell and trap decks. We run 1 Grand Neos, which is the Molan Neos, to bounce things back, and then the 1 copy of Air Neos. Let's say we get absolutely destroyed and pounded early game or burned for whatever reason. Then we have the life point disadvantage to come back and punch hard. Then we run for our triple contact fusions 1 copy of Magma Neos, which is really, really good. It gets a big boy. And then my favorite one is Nebula Neos. Nebula Neos, again, goes back to the whole aspect of drawing and refreshing your hand and seeing new things. This card is so awesome. Then we also have 1 copy of Storm Neos. It rarely gets out, but I have him here. It's really good for clearing back row. And then, of course, we have Cosmo Neos. So Cosmo Neos is the biggest one. It takes Neos in like 3 different Neo-Spacians, and it just shuffles everything face down. And then finally, the shiniest card on top, 1 copy of Anaconda. I hope it doesn't get hit. I feel like, sort of rogue / fun decks really utilize him the best, so I really like to have him as a one of here. But again, if it happens, it happens. No biggie. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Stick around. I'll be dropping another video soon for some test hands. Again, this deck does like to kind of go second. It can go first and go second, but primarily loves to kind of blind second. So I'll do my best to give you guys some test hands in regards to that. So thank y'all, and class dismissed.